Okay, vlog number 4. Oh, one of my subscribers said I say too much. I don't know if I'm going to be able to change that. I'll try. Gonna change it. So here was my topic I was alluding to in the last vid, or I mentioned in the last vid, and that is miniatures and role-playing. My opinion is that they take away from the role-playing experience, and I'll explain. This is an opinion, so feel free to disagree. I find when you use miniatures, there's a disconnect between you and your character. So let's say, for example, I'm playing 3rd edition D&D and I have a battle mat and I'm moving my miniatures around based upon what's happening in the Game Master's story. I find it reduces roleplay somewhat by having you concentrate on where you're going to move. I move 3 squares here, 4 squares here. Instead of describing, so that's part of it. Instead of describing what you're going to do next, people are more apt to tell, right, what they're going to do instead of describing it. So, oh, I move over here, and then the miniature goes to the corner, as opposed to I move to a corner of the room, wherever I can find, and I stealthily move along the wall, and what do I see? And then the Game Master draws a picture, well, in his mind, you know, by conveying the information. Well, in front of you is an area 4x3 with stone walls that are wet with moss, slick with dripping liquid of some sort, and you know, a plethora of lichen, you know, dot the floor in front of you. Your footfalls resound with heavy clanking around the walls. And the firelight, you know, flickers along the radiant pool, or what have you. Yeah, I normally do a better job than that, but I'm trying to concentrate on driving as well. I gotta get used to that. So that's one thing. You know, when you're using miniatures as opposed to describing what you're doing and just flipping around your miniatures, you know, the words you use become much less descriptive. The other thing I find with miniatures is that you feel a disconnect from the character anyway. You're disembodied. You're like a disembodied force hovering above these tokens everywhere, and you're gazing down at them, and you're not, it's like you're moving chess pieces around. And I think there's something undefinable there. There's some process at work where you are disconnected from what you're doing. You know, when I play Risk or some other board game, Risk is probably a bad example, but if I play some board game and I never feel like I'm in the trenches of combat when I'm moving around miniatures. That's for me. I don't feel it. Yay! I don't feel it at all. I find there's something, it becomes less of a collaborative story between the Game Master and the players, and more of an arbitrary, movement of game tokens for me. And I find that across the board. Absolutely 100% of the time when I play, that's my experience of it. The players are more like, okay, I move here. Where's the door? Okay, where are the goblins? Can I flank? Do I get a +1? Okay, if I move to here, do I get a 5-foot step? An attack of opportunities really went too far with it with 3rd edition anyway. But it became battle map, and it just ruins the experience for me. It absolutely ruins it. I prefer to use the theater of the mind All right, yeah, that was my other point. I think when you're not using a map, and you're less so a map, I think you can draw out things for your players to look at. But I think if you're using a battle map with miniatures, not only are you, is there a disconnect between you and your character. Sorry, I really gotta get used to this whole vlog and do things. If I was chewing gum, I would crash for sure. Yeah, total disconnect. Sorry, I have another point in a second here. Yeah, I prefer to use the theater of the mind in terms of describing, it becomes a collaborative story, blah, blah, blah. Already mentioned that. I'm just going to take this turn really cool here. Yay! Okay, sorry. I might have to edit this a bit later. I'm losing my points. So, blah, 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 theater of the mind, collaborative story. Yeah, it becomes a collaborative story when you're not using the miniatures, people are describing things, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, that was my other point. I think that your brain is smart. Okay, what do I mean by that? I think that your brain, there's something that happens when you have a game master and you're not using miniatures, and you have a game master who's describing things around you. I think something happens in the brain in terms of the brain filling in the missing sequences, filling in the gaps, and connecting the dots, so that you have a better recollection of a combat, a better recollection of a role-playing experience, because you're using the theater of the mind. Game master's describing, you're picturing it in your head, what's going on, right? That's what I find. And your brain, fills in the gaps, and by doing so, what it does is it creates a more vivid picture, more vivid imagery for you to fall back on. So it's like, oh, remember that time you you cast Blade Barrier, and that creature that was summoned, was thrown by the gust of wind into the scintillating, whirling blades. Oh, I remember that moment, yeah. And everyone might have a slightly different image in their mind as to what that experience looked like. But if you're not doing that, oh wow. If you're not doing that and you're looking at miniatures, you're not going to have the same memory. Your brain isn't going to fill in the gaps like you did before. That's what I think. So I probably have a number of points here, and I'm just randomly saying stuff. Sorry guys, I'm gonna have to get used to the whole vlogging thing. But I do think there's a disconnect. I also think that you're not being as descriptive in your language, and I also think that your brain isn't filling in the gaps with the narrative that you're being told, or the narrative you're engaging in, because it is collaborative storytelling, role playing. So with the miniatures, I think it ruins all of that. You might get a more of a tactical sense of what's going on by looking down and moving your chess pieces around, but I think you miss that. And when you remember the combat, you're remembering the miniatures that are down there. You're not remembering the imagery. You're not remembering how the dragon looked when it burst forth through the wall, and when pieces of rubble and mortar came spraying towards you. You can't remember the agonized scream of your companion as the orc plunged his rusty sword into his torso, and he fell crippled and crumpled to the ground, gazing at the sky. Pinpoints of torchlight reflected in his eyes. You're not getting any of that. You're getting like hit, miss, hit. I think you can describe this stuff with miniatures, but I still think there's a mental disconnect there. I still think they're chess pieces, and it's not you, it's not who you are, it's literally your token piece. Your chess piece just died. Oh, flip it over. You know, your chess piece died. That's what I believe. That's been my experience, and you know, when I'm not trying to stay alive, I'm much more convincing in my arguments. So, agree or disagree? You know, mention it in the comment section if you don't mind. Agree or disagree? What do you think? Do you think that's the case? Do you think miniatures negatively affect the roleplay experience in Dungeons & Dragons or what have you? And ironically enough, I found that the role-playing games that were less likely to use miniatures, like Vampire the Masquerade, World of Darkness, you know, those types of games, they had a richer role-play experience. It really was this, you know, they really are the storytelling RPGs. You know, you're very unlikely to go to a new World of Darkness game and have a bunch of miniatures on the map everywhere, or a Vampire the Masquerade, because people are too involved in becoming their character. You know, those are my thoughts. Those are my disjointed thoughts on the matter. So let me know what you think, and hopefully, you know, a good discussion will be had in the comment section. And if you disagree, well, feel free to disagree. I mean, that's the beauty of life, right? And discourse, where it's not, you know, there can be a bit of give and take, you know, change of opinion. Oh, great. Yeah, sure thing there. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble writing when I'm vlogging. I don't know what's going on. So, that's about it. What else can I talk about? Real life. That's boring. Real life is not interesting. I don't know. Oh yeah, Darth Vader. Big fan.